Welcome to Impact 2021. My name is Nathaniel, and this is our continuing conversation where we talk about issues related to church, related to life, related to social justice, social change, religion, everything. As a reminder to those who may be new, or as a reminder to those who are not new, and as an introduction to those who are new, this is a conversation. It goes back and forth. You type in questions and you type in comments into the comment section if you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube, and we address them. We talk about them. We go right in. So if there's anything you want to say on the topic or even slightly off of the topic, feel free to type it in and we will get right to it. That's for the viewers who are seeing it live. Those on delay, sorry. You can't get a live comment, but what you still can do is type your comments and questions in, because this is a continuing conversation, and as we see them, we'll continue on the conversation. So let's hop right into it. Today's a little bit of a different day, and the reason being we don't have a guest today. This is kind of a, I guess you could call this a celebratory moment, maybe. June 9th last year at this time, that was when we started this Impact 2021 conversation. And since then, we've had numerous conversations with numerous guests, numerous topics. We've gone everywhere with this, along the spectrum of things we've talked about. Of course, we started with a lot of the social issues at the time, with police, with protests. We went around. We talked about churches' responsibilities. We talked about things like guns, people having guns, and whether that changes the dynamic. We just talked about a myriad of topics. And so today, 1 year later, things have changed a little bit. And we've talked about this before. We've talked about how the environment has changed. If you look on the political spectrum, or you want to look at the president, that's different. If you want to look at how people address certain groups, that's different. I remember prior to last year, 2020, in the pandemic, Black Lives Matter was not so well accepted. It became extremely well accepted. And now it's kind of gone back a little bit more on the acceptance with the organization, but still you can walk around, you can say Black Lives Matter. A lot of things have really moved along, but we're not really focusing on that. So today, really just want to focus in real briefly today on a couple of things that came across my view. So what we've been talking about recently, if you've been watching, is that we've been talking about the role of the church, and not just the role of the church, but the role of the church on Monday through Saturday. So not the role of church on Sunday. How church folk should participate in everyday life. And so we talk about everyday life topics, and that is our current journey that we're on. And so we brought in guests to talk about that, and we continue to have interesting conversations with that and interesting comments that come in as well. Today, though, however, one of the things that came across my view was a couple of articles that discussed church and discussed people leaving the church during the pandemic. Depending on what numbers you see and what articles you may read and what statistics you may read, they said that 1 in 3 people who went to church prior to the pandemic are not in church or went away from church during the pandemic. It doesn't really include right now at this point in time where we have vaccines and things have opened up. It was just a couple of months prior. They were saying 1 in 3 people, and was not, or so had disengaged. Some of those reasons was their churches weren't streaming. The churches weren't open. They weren't streaming online, or they didn't have an opportunity to see that. So some of the older churches that didn't have the technology or didn't have the ability or have a person or persons to be able to stream their services, that is a portion of that 1 in 3. The other 1 in 3 is just some people got, comfortable not going to church and just didn't want to participate as far as the online services. Maybe it's because I just don't want to. Maybe it's because being able to watch it on television isn't their thing. Some people don't have the ability or the attention span to kind of keep up with that. I know it's, we all know we've been in Zoom meetings and Teams meetings. Sometimes your mind can wander when you're not really in the room. And so there's been numerous reasons. One of the things that they were saying, though, is that there's two groups. 1 in 3 went away for whatever reason. So the 2 out of 3, they were still watching or participating in church, whether their church was still open or they were participating online. And then there's another group of people who weren't participating in church, but then started or went back because it was online. So maybe they were working, maybe they were, just tired, too busy, whatever the reason, they just couldn't get to church on Sunday. But now that the world had changed, they were able to get re-engaged or engaged for the first time within church and within services. However, that number is pretty small. According to the articles that I read, each one described it as a statistically insignificant number. So it wasn't like the 1 in 3 who went away. They couldn't even put it down as 1% or 2%. But the number of people who, we'll say clicked back into church or got connected to church was small. We can even see that from our own ministry. So when you look at the Modern Christian Ministries, I'm going to put all the information up on the screen. We've noticed some people who had been with us in the past in the physical form and got back with us or re-engaged or participated in our services online. And so had we not gone to the online platform or the online format, they wouldn't have participated or they wouldn't have had the opportunity to for whatever reason, as we talked about, time, just inconvenient, whatever. And so that was with Bible study, that was with Sunday service. So we're seeing people who just popped in. It's like, boom, wow, this is great. You're able to get re-engaged and re-involved. And so we saw that, from our own, at our own ministry here. So the question then that is posed within these articles and in these discussions is that from this point going forward, where the 1 in 3 left, will they be returned? One of the interesting points is some of those people can't return because some of those churches have closed down. And so some of the ministries that just couldn't maintain over that time have just folded up, packed it up, gone. When they closed during the pandemic, but they're closed permanently or semi-permanently. So those people can't get re-engaged with their own ministry and would have to go somewhere else. They said another interesting part was that there's a good number of people who decided to tune into some other churches. And so even though their church and their ministry was streaming, they decided, hey, let's look at something else. Let's go somewhere else. Interesting dynamic. It was more of a shopping feature because now it's not your neighborhood church that you were going to. It's not your church that your parents or your family church that you're obligated to go to. It's whoever is, inspiring you. That can be good or bad. It could be the person that's tickling your ears with the sweet sounds of nothing, or it can be someone who is really giving you some word, or just connects with you in a different way than the ministry or the pastor that you're currently with. And so there was some weird dynamics there. All of that to be said, all of that to be packaged together to say, when we're talking about the role of the church, and we're talking about the new role not the new role of the church, but reevaluating what the role of the church is, especially on Monday through Saturday, knowing that 1 in 3 people were not participating on Sunday, and knowing that there was an opportunity to touch some folk that were not participating on Sunday, what is then the role of the church to get people re-engaged with the Word of God? One of the things they also pointed out in one of the studies was that they went through, and of the people that they questioned, these were all people who were church going folk. who either went to church before and stopped or continued to go to church. And so no one who just wasn't going to church. I just want to make that clear about the stat, or not the stat, but the result that they came with. When they checked off with the people and they asked the question, how do you feel currently about the situation that's going on? Are you okay? Do you feel anxious and upset? You feel terrible? They were saying that the people who had disengaged from church were feeling very anxious about their future and about what was going on. Whereas the people who were still active in their ministry, watching, participating, however, they were more likely to say that they felt optimistic about the future, that they were okay with what was going on. They weren't anxious or upset. And so I think the question then becomes, for the role of the church and how we're doing it Monday through Saturday, what we've come to with this whole conversation: social justice, police brutality, people not being treated correctly, Asian hate crimes. When we look at the rioting that happened at the state cap, at Congress. When you look at all of this, there are numerous reasons for people to be anxious on a day-to-day basis. Numerous reasons for people to be questioning their future. And what that study says to me is that the church has been a place of comfort, and the church has been a place of a place to take away some of this anxious thoughts about your reality of today and your future. And so, whether you say, well, it's comfort because you believe in God, or it's comfort because you believe in the family of the church who takes care of one another, it's comfort. And so when we look at the role of the church, and we've looked at the role of the church as an agitator in some sense, as a judgment factory in some sense, where you look at, where we've talked about over and over again what the Catholics are doing, the Catholic bishops, the United States Catholic bishops are doing. We're trying to see how they want to deal with communion, trying to make sure that certain people don't take communion if they don't agree with with certain parts of what these bishops want. Or you look at people being very judgmental about folks' lifestyles, how they personally want to live their lives. And that's a whole bunch of decisions, whether it be, how you want to dress, how you want to act, how you want to look, what do you want to do. Look at the church as a real chechen. We're out here cheching folk, telling folk, you can't do this and you can't do that. We're going to make you do this and make you do that. We want to make laws to do this and make you do that. Instead of looking at it like that, because I think that's the wrong view, because that's not what we're about. That's just what a couple of people are about. But the church's role is as comfort, is as building that relationship to bring you to a place of less anxiousness and more love. If God is love, and that's what we're producing, or that's what we're bringing you close to, you should lose some of that anxiousness when you're talking about life in general. So to bring it back to what we're talking about, COVID brought people away. 1 in 3 people left the church. The question is, what will bring them back and bring new people into the fold? They were very clear. The boomer generation, some of them went away, but it wasn't a lot. Then you had Generation X, some of them went away, but it wasn't a lot. Then you had the millennial generation, and that's where the numbers really kind of tailed off, where the millennials had decided we're not going to participate in church as much. So when you talk about that 1 in 3 number, the majority of that 1 in 3 was millennials. And so we're looking here, comment, is the church still relevant? Is the Christian faith still relevant? That is where we're looking at when we're talking about that millennial population, that millennial group, that 1 in 3. It's the relevancy. Why were they able to get away from the church? Because there was a pandemic. You understand physically, you're not in the physical form, you're not going to be able to be there. And so the relevancy of the church is what is going to bring people back. And is it relevant? It's irrelevant if all you're going to do is sit there and complain and criticize. But that's not even what the Bible is about. And so it's giving guidelines to how you can live, but it's not. It's like it's funny. We've let so many other people do the narrative of what church is, and that's why we have this discussion about whether or not it's relevant, because we need to be able to voice what the narrative is. The real church, Christians, people who are actually following the Bible and are not there for political reasons, for personal reasons outside of really knowing church, for connections and whatnot. We need to stop letting those people define who we are. And in order to do that, we have to have these conversations to know, are we relevant and why are we relevant? And according to the survey that was taken, the relevancy was in the comfort. The relevancy was, you see that Christians are not getting broken down. When the world is getting broken down due to a pandemic, Christians, especially those who were still connected to church, were not getting broken down. That's the relevancy. So why is that? If I'm someone sitting out here and I'm scared and I'm nervous because there's a pandemic and everyone's wearing masks and people are dying right and left, how come the Christians that I see are able to check off the box and like, I'm good. The economy was going all types of crazy. Businesses are closing, people are losing their jobs. Even if you wanted to go to work, you couldn't go to work because they weren't open because of COVID. But you consistently watching these Christians, I'm good. And so where does that goodness come from? Why are you good? And so that's the relevancy that we have to do with the church. How do we make sure that we continuously get that message out? In the middle of seeing police murder unarmed Black people, and Christians were saying, I'm good. Now, that could look like, oh man, they don't care. And they're just oblivious or ignorant to the fact that there are people out here in the struggle. Maybe they're not in the struggle. No, we're in the struggle, but we're good. And why are we good? We're good because of our faith. We know, we know that this is that, we know that this, as they say, we know that this earthly tabernacle, this is not it for us. And so, I think when we sit back and we talk about the relevancy, and we sit back and we talk about what we need to do Monday through Saturday, how much do we need to participate when it comes to these issues, political issues, or when we look at social issues, when we look at race issues, when we look at just issues that are not necessarily outlined in what the Christian should be doing, or outlined in the Bible. Let's put it that way. Issues that aren't black and white in the Bible. Then what comfort are we bringing? Then what comfort are we bringing to people? What are we doing to help those out there? So Monday through Saturday, do we get involved in these things? I say yes, because if these are the issues that make you anxious, and we're checking the box that says Christians are less anxious, then we need to get into the anxious issues so that we can help with that angst. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but it makes sense to me. So yeah, that's what the study showed me. And that's what I wanted to share today, is that the study is very clear that the pandemic had a significant impact on churches. And this was across the board. This wasn't one type of church. It wasn't, Baptist churches or Catholic churches or evangelical churches, this was everyone, as far as the study had gone. And so we have to, now that the pandemic is changing, because I'm not going to say it's lightening up, because we sit back here and we see that there's a Delta variant out here, and they're saying that people, even with the vaccine, are getting it. So it's not that, things have lightened up. We are not normal, as they say, or back to normal, because, this is normal, just life changing, things always moving and changing. So the question then just is continuous on, what do we do now? What's our next steps? And it looks like, for me, from my standpoint, and from what I've seen today is that our next steps is to make sure that we get into all of the areas that are bringing you angst and stress. We need to be there as a church. What's the church got to say about that? This area of my life is bothering me. I don't have a job. That's bothering me. Well, the church needs to kind of get there and get in that area. Well, I'm scared of the police. Well, what does the church got to say about that? Not that we need to be a bunch of politicians out here trying to run for office and control things. No. But what do we have to say with that? The last thing I would want to do is to try to make people do things. And I'll put my personal belief out there. I am adamantly against forcing people to do something one way or the other. When you look at the abortion debate, and people are like, oh, abortions are bad. If you're a Christian who thinks that abortions are bad, that is 100% fine and okay. But I am adamantly against forcing people to do what we want them to do. They should come to God because they love God, and they should follow the rules set forth in the Bible because they love God, not because you try to force them to do so. And that's what I'm saying with our participation. You say what the church says, but you don't try to force people to do anything. That's crazy. That's always been crazy to me. And that's that's my personal belief. But God wants you to come to Him, not be dragged to Him. And we have another comment. So some churches do not want to deal with the issues that are important to people. Yeah, I think that's right there. Some people don't want to deal with it. It's difficult. It's difficult. And, you don't want to sit back and deal with issues that you may have some problems. Sit back here as a man. Sometimes we got to sit back and, as a man, sometimes we got to sit back and deal with some issues and say, hey, our history hasn't been so great when it comes to relationships with women. Sexism, women not being able to vote, different issues like that. I'm not going to shy away from that. That's the reality. That's the reality of what has happened. And the reality is that a woman gets paid less than a man. I don't remember the number. I think it's 75 cents on the dollar. Things such as that. People don't want to deal with issues because then you become a little bit out there. And even though I'm not making any laws to abuse any women, I have to recognize and sit back and say, hey, the way that things are set up inside and outside of the church, they're not quite fair for women. And one of the reasons is men don't want to give up a lot of this power that we have. And so that's a debate and a conversation that needs to be had. It's not an easy one, but we all need to see exactly where we need to be. And, and so I think you're 100% right on that. Some churches just don't want to deal with the tough issues. You're a white church, you may not necessarily want to deal with race. If you're a black church, you may not necessarily want to deal with race. If you're a mixed church, you may definitely not want to deal with race, going both ways. So that's just the way it is, unfortunately. But that's the conversation that we need to keep having. And that's what we need to continue to do. And that's why we have, again, this show. 1 year, been doing it 1 year. We're going to continue to do it. And I thank you for continuing to be on the journey with us and continue to be in the conversation. So hopefully next week, we will continue this conversation with some different guests to continue to talk about the church's role. And we're staying on that for a while, and we're going to really get into that. So the church's role in your daily life, not Sunday, not just Sunday, but Monday through Saturday. My name is Nathaniel. This is Impact 2021. Please feel free to join us on Sundays for service in Mighty Christian Ministries, and also on Thursdays for Thursday Thirst, our Bible study. And please feel free at any point to continue to put comments in the comment section. Give us a call, contact us. We're here for you. Thank you. Have a good night.